The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord floated silently in space above the neutral world of Exterra. It was not just a room. It was the largest meeting place in the entire galaxy. Inside it, more than 200 alien species sat in perfect order. Some had wings. Some had tentacles. Some were made of light. Some were machines that never breathed. For thousands of years, they ruled the stars together. And for thousands of years, they believed one thing. Nothing in the universe could truly surprise them anymore. They were wrong. A small figure stepped into the center of the hall. Her name was Lyran. She was not powerful. She was not famous. She was not from an important world. She came from a small ocean planet far away from the center of the galaxy. Her people were called the Tizian. 4 arms. Soft skin. Gentle voices. They were not warriors. They were singers, farmers, teachers. A peaceful race that loved music more than weapons. But Lyran was not here for music. She was here because her world was dying. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were red from weeks without sleep. In her grip was a small glowing data crystal. Inside it was everything her people had left. She walked slowly to the speaking platform. Every eye in the hall turned toward her. Some looked bored. Some looked curious. Some didn't even bother to look at all. Because in this galaxy, small races were never important. That was the rule. That was the system. Lyran placed the crystal down. The room fell silent. A deep, heavy silence. The kind that presses on your chest. She took a breath and spoke. "My name is Lyran," she said softly. "My world is dying." A pause. "The Corvith have entered our system. They are taking everything. Our oceans. Our land. Our future." Another breath. "In 30 days, my people will be gone. 3 billion lives, erased." Her voice cracked. Her hands shook harder. "We cannot fight them. We have no fleet. No weapons. Only songs and memories." She lowered her head. "So I beg you. Please help us. Send anyone. Send anything. We will serve you for 1,000 years. Just save us." Then she collapsed. Right there. On her knees. In front of the entire galaxy. And nothing happened. No one moved. No one spoke. No one helped. Just silence. Heavy and cold. Then the first response came. An Aurelian rose. One of the oldest and strongest species in the galaxy. Tall. Cold. Powerful. His name was High Lord Zenvar. He spoke without emotion. "We feel your sorrow. But we cannot interfere. Our laws are clear. We do not join conflicts that are not ours. To break this law would break balance itself." He sat down. Just like that. Refused. Lyran's shoulders dropped slightly. But she still stood. Still hoped. The next speaker was a SHR. Green-scaled. Sharp-eyed. Known for greed more than honor. He didn't even stand. He just spoke from his seat. "This world has no value to us," he said. "No resources worth saving. No strategic gain. Helping you would cost more than it gives. Therefore, no." Another refusal. Then came the Vasian Choir. A collective mind. A species that believed everything followed fate. Their voice echoed softly through the hall. "The song of your world is ending. And it must end. To change it would break the universe's balance. So we cannot help." Another no. Then the Makari spoke. A machine intelligence. Perfect logic.
No emotion.
Only numbers. "We have calculated the outcome. Corvith fleet size, 4,000 ships. Chance of victory if we intervene, 0.003%. Estimated loss, unacceptable. Conclusion, intervention denied." One by one, they all said the same thing. No, 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 no. Some gave reasons. Some didn't even bother. But the answer never changed. Lyran slowly lowered her head. Her body stopped shaking. Not because she was calm, but because she had nothing left to give. She had lost. Not in battle, but in hope. She turned. One step. Then another. Walking away from the center of the galaxy. From the last place she thought she might be saved. And then, a voice spoke from the back of the hall. Wait. Lyran stopped. She turned. A human had stood up. Most species barely paid attention to humans. They were new. Small. Emotional. Unpredictable. Barely 90 years in the Concord. To the older races, they were not important. Just noise in the background of the galaxy. But this human woman stepped forward. Calm. Focused. Unafraid. Her name was Captain Elena Voss. She walked straight through the silent hall. Past the Aurelian. Past the SHR. Past the Makari.
No hesitation.
No fear. She stopped in front of Lyran. Looked at her. Then knelt down. So they were eye level. We will go, she said. Lyran blinked. What? We will help you, Voss repeated. Humanity will come. The hall exploded. Shouts. Laughter. Disbelief. Anger. The Aurelian Lord stood again. This is madness, he said sharply. The Corvus will destroy you. You will die for nothing. Voss didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed on Lyran. Then she stood up and turned toward the entire hall. Maybe we will lose, she said calmly. Maybe we will die. But we are still going. She paused. Her voice grew harder. If a child is crying for help, you don't calculate. You don't debate. You don't wait. You geo. Silence. Different now. Not empty. Heavy with shock. Voss turned back to Lyran. Held out her hand. Lyran hesitated. Then slowly, placed her hand into the human's. I promise you, Voss said quietly. We are coming. And for the first time in many weeks, Lyran believed someone. Outside the hall. A war had just begun. And the galaxy didn't even realize it yet. The moment Captain Elena Voss made that promise, the galaxy did not believe her. Not even a little. A human fleet was nothing in the eyes of the Concord. Small. Young. Unproven. Barely 90 years of space travel compared to civilizations older than stars. To the great powers of the galaxy, humans were still just children playing with warships. But something strange happened after Voss left the hall. The silence did not break. It stayed. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Like the galaxy itself had been forced to think about something it had avoided for a long time. Lyran stood alone in the center of the Concord Hall. Her four hands still felt the warmth of the human's grip. She did not understand what had just happened. But for the first time in weeks, she was not completely hopeless. Behind her, the Aurelian High Lord Zenvar sat back down slowly. But he did not speak. He just stared at the empty space where the human had stood. As if something inside him had shifted, but he did not yet have a name for it. Far away in the human system, Earth was already reacting. Before Captain Voss even returned home, before she even spoke to command, the galaxy had already started whispering. And on Earth, the whisper became a storm. Every screen lit up. Every channel repeated the same message. A dying alien world. A refusal from the galaxy. And one answer from humanity. We will go. At first, people were shocked. Then angry. Then afraid. Because everyone understood the same thing. This was not a rescue mission. This was a war. Against something far stronger. Far older. Far more dangerous. The Corvus. A species that did not negotiate. Did not stop. Did not forgive. They consumed worlds like fire consumes dry wood. And now, humanity had stepped in front of them. In cities across Earth, people argued. Some said it was suicide. Some said it was stupidity. Some said Voss had no right to speak for all humanity. But others felt something different. Something deeper. Something ancient inside the human mind. Because even the smallest people on Earth understood one thing. If no one comes when someone is dying, Then what is civilization even for? In Nairobi, an old woman sold everything she owned. She didn't explain why. She just said, "My grandson should grow up in a galaxy where people still care." In Brazil, students painted Tizian children on banners. In India, farmers donated food supplies meant for a war they might never return from. In Japan, engineers volunteered without sleep. And in every corner of Earth, we are going. Meanwhile, Captain Voss returned to Earth. And she was not greeted like a hero. She was greeted like a mistake. In a military command center in Geneva, Admiral Thomas Reyes stood waiting for her. Old, tired, worn down by too many wars. "You understand what you've done?" he asked quietly. "You've lit a fire across the entire planet." "Yes, sir," Voss replied. "And I would do it again." Reyes studied her face, looking for doubt, looking for fear. He found none. Instead, he saw something worse. Certainty. "You think we can win this?" he asked. Voss paused. "No, sir." That answer surprised him. She continued, "But I think we can fight it." A long silence followed. Then Reyes turned away, looked out at the city below. Lights, people, life, fragile, and unaware of what was coming. "My son died in a colony war," he said quietly. "He died trying to save strangers. They called him a fool." He clenched his fist slightly. "I never agreed with them." He turned back. His voice was different now. Stronger. "You have my fleet, Captain. All of it." But the numbers were not kind. Humanity could gather 380 warships, a few support vessels, and hope, which no one could measure, against the Corvus. 4,000 ships. Hive coordination.
No hesitation. No merci.
The math was simple. And brutal. But humanity had something else. Something the galaxy had not counted. A young scientist stepped forward. Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Quiet. Focused. Soft voice. But sharp mind. She had studied the Corvus for years. And she finally spoke in front of the War Council. "The Corvus are not just strong," she said. "They are predictable." The room went quiet. She continued. "They have never fought an enemy that breaks rules. They expect patterns. They expect logic. They expect fear." She looked up. "But humans do not fight like that." A pause. Then the line that changed everything. "We are not predictable. We are wrong on purpose." Silence. Admiral Reyes leaned forward slightly. "Explain." Yuki took a breath. "In every war in human history, we win by doing what should not work. We hide where we shouldn't hide. We survive when we shouldn't survive. We keep fighting when we should already be dead." She pointed at the data screen. "The Corvus cannot calculate that." A pause. "They have never fought chaos that thinks." A faint smile appeared on Reyes's face. "So we don't fight fair," he said. Yuki nodded. "No, sir. We make them fight us." Outside the council room, something else was already happening. Quietly. Without permission. Messages were being sent. Not from governments. Not from admirals. But from people inside other civilizations. An Aurelian engineer. A Makari subunit. A Vasian young singer. All sending the same thing. Maps. Coordinates. Weak points. Warnings. Not because they were ordered to, but because they had seen the message from Lyran. And something inside them broke. Back on Earth, Captain Voss visited her home. For the last time before war. A small house near the sea. Quiet. Normal. Human. Her daughter was waiting. Mira. 8 years old. Curious eyes. Soft voice. "Are you going far?" Mira asked. "Yes," Voss said gently. "Very far." "To save the fish people?" Voss smiled faintly. "Yes." "Will you come back?" That question stayed in the air. Heavy. Honest. Voss looked at the ocean. Then back at her daughter. "I will try," she said softly. And that was the first time Mira understood something important. Even heroes do not get guarantees. That night, Voss wrote a letter. She did not cry. Not once. Because commanders do not have that luxury. Not when the galaxy is waiting. She sealed it. And gave it to her sister. One sentence was written on the box. "For Mira, only if I do not return." Outside Earth, the fleet began to assemble. Ships rising into orbit one by one. Like a silent promise being built in metal. And far away in the dark, the Corvus kept moving. Unaware. Unstoppable. Confident. They still believed one thing. No one would come. They were about to learn how wrong that belief was. The human fleet did not leave Earth like an army. It left like a promise that had finally become real. 380 ships rose into orbit. One by one. Quietly.
No celebration.
No music. Just engines burning through silence. On every ship, there were names painted on the hull. Not of weapons, but of people. Mothers. Children. Teachers. Farmers. All the ordinary lives that made humanity what it was. And every ship carried the same message. Bring them home. On Earth, people watched from every screen. No one was cheering. No one was smiling. Because everyone understood the truth. This might be the last time they saw those ships leave. Far away in deep space, the Corvus continued their harvest. They were already feeding on the Tizian world. The oceans were disappearing. Land was being pulled into machines like dust into a vacuum. From above, the planet looked like it was being erased. Slowly, carefully, systematically. The Corvus did not feel cruelty. They felt only purpose, efficiency, expansion. To them, this was not destruction. It was order. But then, the sky changed. Space tore open at the edge of the system. One human ship appeared. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The Corvus hive mind paused. Not fear. Not panic. Just confusion. This was not supposed to happen. No one was supposed to come. On the bridge of the lead human ship, Captain Elena Voss stood still, watching the burning world below. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "This is worse than we thought." No one replied. They didn't need to. Everyone could see it. The planet was dying. And they were late. "Open all channels," Voss ordered. Her communications officer obeyed. A young woman from Lagos. Hands steady. Eyes focused. "Channels open, Captain." Voss took a breath. Then spoke. "This is Captain Elena Voss of the United Terran Coalition. We are here for evacuation and defense. Leave this system. Now." A pause. Then the reply came. It was not one voice. It was many. Merged. Cold. Inhuman. Why? Just one word. Voss didn't hesitate. Because they asked for help. Silence. Then the Corvus answered again. "Request does not alter outcome. You will be removed." The channel cut. On every human ship. The same tension spread. Not fear. Not panic. Focus. This was the moment training ended. And reality began. "Combat formation," Voss said. Then she paused. And corrected herself. "No." A different tone now. A human tone. "Break formation." The bridge crew looked at her. Voss's eyes stayed on the burning world. "We are not fighting like them. We are not a wall. We are not a line." A pause. Then the order that would define the war. "We are chaos. Move." The human fleet split instantly. Like a fist turning into a storm. Ships scattered in all directions. No pattern.
No symmetry. No predictability.
The Corvus hive mind reacted instantly. Trying to calculate. Trying to predict. Trying to solve. But it couldn't. Because humans were not solving anything. They were improvising. The first human ship struck. Not with a straight attack. But by appearing where no one expected. Inside the gap between two Corvus vessels, explosions bloomed in space. Silent, bright, final. The Corvus adjusted. They adapted. They responded. But every time they adapted, humans changed again. A ship dove too close. Another used gravity to slingshot through fire. Another simply ignored survival entirely to hit a command node. On the Corvus network, confusion spread for the first time in their history. This was not war. This was unpredictability turned into a weapon. On the bridge of a Corvus command vessel, the hive mind tried to stabilize. It calculated again and again. But the variables kept breaking. One fragment of thought emerged across the network. Error, behavior not found in known systems. Meanwhile, on a small human frigate, a pilot named Diaz laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was terrifying. And there was no other response left. He opened his comms, played music, unfiltered, human, and flew straight into a Corvus ship. The impact lit up space. Another human ship followed. Captain Sarah Patel. She didn't speak. She played music too. Classical Earth music. Calm. Beautiful. As if the universe was still normal. Even while it burned. The Corvus did not understand it. But they felt it. Something inside their perfect system. Breaking. Far below, the Tizian survivors watched. Their broken world. Their dying oceans. Then they saw something impossible. Their own people rising. Small ships. Old ships. Fishing vessels. Transport pods. Not built for war. Not built for anything like this. But they moved anyway. Straight into the battle. Straight into death. On the bridge of the Antigone. Lieutenant Okafor froze. "Captain," she whispered. Voss turned. Okafor pointed at the screen. Tizian ships were placing themselves between human vessels and Corvus fire. Taking hits meant for others. Dying. Voluntarily. Voss went silent. For the first time since the war began. A message came through. A Tizian fisherman. Old voice. Broken signal. But alive. "We are with you," he said softly. "You came for us. We do not leave you alone." Voss closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Then opened them again. Harder now. Stronger. "All ships," she said. "Push forward. We are not alone." The battle changed after that. Not in scale. But in meaning. It was no longer just humans. No longer just Tizian. It was something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Different species. Different minds. One direction. Against something that believed nothing would ever stand together. And for the first time, the Corvus started to lose ships faster than they could understand why. Far away. More signals were leaving the system. Not official. Not approved. Witnesses were watching. And deciding. Because war was no longer just happening here. It was spreading. And the galaxy was beginning to choose a side. The battle over the Tizian world was no longer a fight. It had become a breaking point for the entire galaxy. Space above the dying ocean world was filled with fire. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of weapons firing at once. Silent explosions blooming like dying stars. And still, the Corvus kept coming. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They did not feel lost the way others did. To them, every destroyed ship was just data. Every dead vessel, a correction. But something was changing. Slowly. Deep inside their hive mind. Confusion was growing. Not fear. Not emotion. Just something they had never experienced before. Uncertainty. Because the humans were not behaving like any enemy in their history. They were not defending. They were not retreating. They were not even surviving in a normal way. They were refusing to behave correctly. On the bridge of the Antigone, Captain Elena Voss stood in silence. Her ship was damaged. Smoke filled the lower decks. Lights flickered red. People were injured. Some were gone. But the fleet was still fighting. Still moving. Still holding the line. Lieutenant Okafor spoke quietly. "Captain, Reinforcements incoming. Voss turned. What kind? Okafor hesitated, then looked at the screen. I don't think we know. Space behind them began to tear open. One jump point. Then another. Then dozens. Ships were arriving. But not human ships.
Aurelian war cruisers.
Tall. Bright. Perfectly engineered. Makari machine fleets. Silent. Perfect formation. Like moving logic itself. Vasion song ships. Surrounding space with shifting harmonic waves. And even ships no one expected to ever see in war. Species that had refused. Species that had said no in the Concord Hall. Now, they were here. Voss stared at it. For the first time since the battle began. She couldn't speak. Okafor whispered. They came. Voss nodded slowly. Yes. Then softer. They came. The Corvus hive mind reacted instantly. But something was wrong now. The numbers didn't add up anymore. The enemy had multiplied. Not just in ships, but in types of thinking. The Corvus had prepared for one kind of war. A coordinated war. A predictable war. A logical war. But this was not that. This was chaos, multiplied by unity. On an Aurelian flagship. High Lord Zenvar stood at the command bridge. His voice was different now. No longer cold. No longer distant. Target Corvus command grid, he ordered. A young officer hesitated. Lord, this violates. Zenvar cut him off. I know exactly what it violates. A pause. Then quieter. And I no longer care. Across the battlefield, the Makari fleet began something new. Not defense. Not prediction. Adaptation. They stopped calculating safe outcomes. They started calculating winning outcomes. Even if the cost was unknown. A Makari unit spoke across the network. We have added a new variable. What variable? Another asked. A pause. Then the answer. The humans were right. At the same time, the Vasion ships changed their signal. No longer one perfect harmony. Now, many voices. Different tones. Different emotions. They were no longer one mind. They were individuals again. And they were singing like it mattered. Back on the battlefield, the Corvus hive mind began to fracture. Because for the first time in its existence, it could not predict the outcome. Too many variables. Too many unknowns. Too many choices. And then it happened. Aurelian ships struck a Corvus command cluster. Makari drones disabled 3 carrier webs. Vasion resonance waves disrupted coordination. Human ships broke straight through the center line. And the Corvus formation failed. Not destroyed. Not wiped out. Just broken. For the first time in their history, the hive mind issued a command it had never used before. Retreat. On the Antigone. The bridge went silent. Okafor blinked. Did they just? Voss finished the sentence. Yes. She looked at the burning world below. Still dying. Still wounded. But not alone anymore. The battle was not over. Not even close. The Corvus still had thousands of ships. Still had reinforcements coming. Still had strength. But something had changed. Something irreversible. They were no longer unstoppable. They were no longer certain. And in war, uncertainty is the first crack in an empire. Far away in the darkness, more signals began moving. Slowly, quietly, across the galaxy. Because now everyone knew one thing. The humans were not alone anymore. And neither was the war. The war above Tizian was no longer a battle for a world. It had become a battle for the idea of the galaxy itself. Space was burning in every direction. Broken ships drifted like dead stars. Smoke, fire, and light filled the void where silence used to live. The Corvus fleet still outnumbered everyone. They still had strength. They still had machines. They still had millions of years of dominance behind them. But something had changed forever. They were no longer alone in certainty. On the human flagship, Antigone, Captain Elena Voss stood on a broken bridge. Lights flickered. Alarms were quiet now. Not because things were fine, but because nothing had time to make noise anymore. Lieutenant Okafor spoke softly. Captain, Corvus reinforcements are entering the system. Voss didn't look away from the screen. How many? Okafor swallowed. Too many. A long silence. Then Voss nodded once. Then we finish this before they settle in. Across the battlefield, the Allied fleets moved as one. Not perfectly. Not controlled. But together. Aurelian ships struck from above like falling suns. Makari swarms broke formations and rewrote battle logic in real time. Vasion ships flooded space with shifting harmonic disruption. Human ships did what humans always did. They went where they should not go, and survived where they should not survive. And the Corvus, they began to fail. Not in fire, but in understanding. The hive mind tried to adapt, tried to calculate, tried to restore control. But every solution broke faster than it could form. Because there was no longer one enemy. There were hundreds. No. There were thousands of ways to fight. And the hive mind could not process freedom. On the Corvus Command Core, a rare signal emerged. Not order. Not strategy. Something new. Something it had never generated before. Error. Prediction failure rate exceeding survival threshold. Then another. Unknown variable. Cooperation across non-compatible systems. Then silence. On the battlefield, a single Corvus command ship finally turned. It attempted to retreat. But it was too late. Human ships were already inside its formation. Aurelian weapons locked its systems. Makari drones shut down its escape routes. Vasion resonance waves fractured its coordination. And then, it stopped moving. Not destroyed. Not dead. Just unable to continue. One by one, the remaining Corvus ships began to withdraw. Slowly. Reluctantly. Uncertainly. For the first time in their history. They ran. On the bridge of Antigone. There was no cheer.
No celebration. No shouting.
Just silence. Heavy. Disbelieving. Okafor whispered. Captain, they're leaving. Voss finally exhaled. Long. Slow. Tired. Yes, she said quietly. They are. She looked at the burning remains of the Tizian world below. The oceans were still damaged. The land still scarred. But the planet was alive. That was enough. Hours later, the last Corvus ships disappeared into dark space. Not defeated completely, but no longer in control. The hive mind, once perfect and absolute, had learned something it could not erase. It could be resisted. And that thought would never leave it again. Days later, the battlefield went silent. Then came the cleanup. The rescue. The rebuilding. Aurelian engineers rebuilt broken cities. Makari systems purified poisoned oceans. Vasion songs carried across healing seas. Human hands worked everywhere at once. And for the first time in centuries, a dying world began to breathe again. 1 year later, the Concord Hall was full again. Same structure. Same species. But nothing was the same anymore. Ambassador Lyron stood at the center. No longer begging. No longer kneeling. She spoke clearly. 1 year ago, I came here asking for help. Most of you said no. She paused. Looked around the hall. One of you said yes. Her gaze turned toward the human side.
Admiral Elena vostot quietly.
Metal arm. Old uniform. Tired eyes. Still unshaken. Lyron continued. Because of that one yes. My people still exist. Silence filled the hall. Different from before. Heavier in meaning. Then High Lord Zenvar stood. Older now. Humbled in a way power could never hide. We were wrong, he said simply. Our laws failed us. Our silence failed them. He lowered his head. We will not make that mistake again. Across the hall, other species followed. Makari units updated their core logic. Vasion voices separated into individuals. Even the SHR quietly signed agreements they once rejected. The galaxy was changing. Not because it had to, but because it had seen what failure looked like. Then Admiral Voss stepped forward. She didn't speak like a legend. She didn't speak like a hero. Just a human. "I don't think we did anything special," she said. "We just went." A pause. Then softer. "When someone cries for help, you go." Silence. Not disagreement. Not argument. Just understanding. Later, a monument was raised. The broken hull of Antigone stood frozen in time. Scarred. Burned. Unfinished. On its side, carved in many languages, was one line. They were not the strongest, but they were the ones who answered. Two children stood in front of it. One human girl. One Tizian girl. Holding hands. Different species. Same future. Above them, ships from across the galaxy floated in quiet orbit. Not as armies, but as witnesses. And somewhere far beyond the stars, the Corvus watched. Silent. Waiting. Thinking. Because now they knew something they never knew before. The galaxy no longer belonged to the strongest. It belonged to those who showed up.